I'm cooking all the food from the TV show The Bear to tell you if it's as good as it looks on screen, and I'll tell you how hard it is to make, because you need to know if it's worth your time and effort to cook these dishes. I did this for season 1, so check out the video here if you're interested in that, but the recipes we see in season 2 are way more involved than what we see in season 1, so I split this video into parts. I did savory food, I'll do desserts, and then I'll do the full-on menu that we see at the end of season 2. One of the things we see a lot of this season is the difficulty of these dishes ramping up immensely, so I've got a big hill to climb in front of me. I had to make some guidelines for the dishes that I'm actually going to cook because we see so much R&D this season. A lot of dishes get tossed, a lot of dishes don't make it through the testing process. I wanted to make dishes that looked incredible and ones that were really, really imperative to the story. Any dishes that get tossed in their testing are not gonna get made by me here today because if they didn't like them, why would I make them? That didn't make a lot of sense to me, so I'm gonna be avoiding those ones. Just like whose line is it anyway, the rules are made up and they don't matter, so I'm gonna break them immediately. The first dish we technically never see in the show, but it sounded so good that I really just needed to make it for my own purposes. Sid used to run a catering company that ended up going under, and that drives a lot of her character arc for the season. She described making a long-cooked, like 72-hour lamb ragu for an event, but the pasta didn't work out, so she put it on King's Hawaiian rolls instead. I am a fiend for King's Hawaiian rolls. Like, me and my best friend used to grow up with King's Hawaiian rolls as like our midnight snack, so I had to try this. For a delicious, sweet vegetal fragrance, a mirepoix is a requirement. The combination of diced onion and diced carrot and diced celery is the base of all that is good and delicious in the world. If you don't hate the anisey flavor of fennel, dice that as well and add it in with a mirepoix. I really, really love that flavor. It's grown on me throughout the years, but I totally get it if you're not into it. I don't know if you're on this part of the internet as well, but I've seen a lot of people talking lately about hobbies having like a 90% rule. Essentially, it's like every hobby has the like glamorous stuff, the stuff that looks really, really cool, but it also has the stuff behind the scenes that's like 90% of the process. Woodworking is 90% measuring and sanding. In my opinion, cooking is like 90% prep and portioning. Keep that in mind when you're actually cooking. If you're trying to like rush through the chopping stage or the browning stage or anything like that, just know that this is the process. Like, this is cooking. It's not just the montages you see on screen of stuff getting tossed in screaming hot pans and things flying. Like, it can be a pretty chill process. If you're watching this video because you like The Bear and you've sort of wanted to dabble into cooking, know that cooking can be as accessible as you make it or as stressful as you make it. The show represents restaurant cooking really well, but at-home cooking is so much different. So I hope that's encouragement to you to really jump in and start doing this. I had to guess on the lamb cut. I wanted something that would be tender after like 8 to 12 hours of cooking, so I went with a shank here. If you're making this, I would stick to around 2 pounds of lamb. If you can find a shoulder that size, go for it. Silver skin like this basically turns into a rubber band, not the most delicious thing to eat. Despite that, it will be easy enough to pull it away once the lamb is fall apart tender, so don't worry about perfection here. Once the silver skin is removed, season the lamb with salt, and we can get this browning in a Dutch oven to form the base of our nice brown flavor. Hot pan with some olive oil, and then those shanks can get cozy. When it's nice and golden, remove them and add in the diced celery, carrots, onion, and fennel. Because there's so much vegetable mass, keep the heat high to cook off the water as quickly as possible. The key to food that's delicious and singing with flavor is to season each layer, so season those vegetables now. In my house, no braise is complete without garlic, so I added in a few cloves of that here, probably like 6 to 8 or so. Add in a whole 6-ounce can of tomato paste. It's a lot, but the sauce is so much tastier because of it. It's not gonna taste like a tomato sauce. It's gonna taste like a really rich, well-seasoned, beautiful kind of brown and red gravy. To keep the dish from becoming bitter from all that tomato paste, it needs to be cooked down here until the color darkens. I also think braises often benefit from like a secret umami ingredient. These are things like soy sauce, Worcestershire sauce, or this anchovy paste. Just something that's gonna bring salty flavor that's not just, you know, the salt in the beef stock or chicken stock or whatever kind of broth you're using to braise it. Red wine goes next, about a half to a full cup, depending on how heavy my hand is that day, honestly. Cook this now until the wine is mostly evaporated. That ensures that the wine flavor isn't overpowering in the final ragu. We're also gonna be braising this at such a low temperature that the wine color and flavor could really penetrate too much into the dish instead of actually evaporating off. Full quart of water goes in next, along with a few bay leaves and the browned lamb shanks. As I mentioned, slow cooking 225 Fahrenheit for 8 hours. It's a long time, I know, but there's really no work done here at this point. Just leave the lid off so evaporation can occur, which is going to cool off the braise slightly so that meat doesn't overcook. Say goodbye to this for, 6 to 8 hours and maybe use that time to catch up on the new season. Please, no spoilers in the comments. I actually haven't finished it yet, trying to get it done as soon as possible. I know 8 hours is a lot, but look at how incredible this looks when it's out. The lamb is perfectly cooked, tender without being dry and stringy, and the sauce is reduced by quite a bit, but it's not burnt. You never really see this bubbling and burbling away, so there's no splattering. Sid mentioned hers took 72 hours to cook, so I'm gonna shred the meat now, let it cool, and fridge it for tomorrow. I'm not gonna be going all the way to 72 hours. Honestly, if it was for a catering event, I imagine she was cooking this for 50 to 100 to 200 people rather than, me and my wife. So I feel like 24 hours is good enough for me. Most braises and sauces taste better the next day anyways, so this is definitely a win-win. A few hours before I'm ready to eat, I'll take this out of the fridge and get it on the stove to simmer. The fat and collagen from the lamb has turned this into almost jello in the cold, so I added a little water to thin it out before simmering. Now we got a ton of flavor from the long slow cook yesterday, but I also want to bring a little bit more depth with the simmer on a stove for a few hours. Uncovered is fine, it's just gonna reduce a little bit more until basically I'm hungry. I truly let this cook for like 3 more hours on low before I was ready to eat. When you've cooked something down so long like this, everything can get sort of muted and almost overcooked flavor-wise. So the best way to lift this up is with vinegar or acid of some sort. I'm gonna use red wine vinegar, just a few tablespoons of it added into the pot. It also helps with a little bit of the gaminess smell you get from lamb. So if you're noticing that a lot, vinegar and salt are gonna help with it. The vinegar is gonna help brighten the dish and make the flavors pop, and then salt and pepper to finish as needed is always a good idea. Now to serve this, the show mentions King's Hawaiian as the vehicle, which I'm so good with. Normally this would be a, nice made pasta, but sometimes you've gotta pivot, especially in the world of restaurants and catering. You have to be quick on your feet. I imagine Sid probably served this like a sloppy joe with the rolls as an actual bun, but for my case, I ladled the ragu on top of 2 toasted rolls and topped it with chives. Normally, lamb shanks are not my thing. I really enjoy lamb in sort of small bursts, but the grassy, gamey flavor of specifically a lamb shank is often a little bit too much for me. In this case though, it was beautiful and I loved it. I don't know if it was the vinegar or just the amount of salt that I used to kind of cover for the gaminess, but my wife and I both agreed that it did not taste as lammy as it seemed like it was going to. The flavor you get off this is really rich, warm, inviting. I mean, this took like 24 hours to make and it tastes like somebody took time and care to make it. This is like a warm country cottage in a bowl. You get a nice, sweet King's Hawaiian roll with it and you are just in lamb heaven. It's very good. This passes both criteria with a little bit of an asterisk. It is better than it looks on screen because we, never saw it on screen. And it's also easier than it looks on screen because, we never saw it on screen. So take that with a grain of salt. I definitely recommend making this one. Like everybody who watched season 2, I was absolutely mesmerized by the delicious looking breakfast sandwich Sid has at Kasama in Chicago. I had quite a few things go wrong while making this, so hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and my experience and make it better at home yourself. I wanted to start with tasty, delicious homemade hash browns. In my head, I was thinking confit potatoes and duck fat and then pattied and fried and crispy and delicious. So I used Chef David Kinch's recipe for pomme paison as a template. I washed a few russet potatoes, peeled them, shredded them. It was really actually helpful to have a grater attachment on a food processor for this. You could totally do this with a box grater, but the thing about this is you want to keep the starch on the potatoes rather than washing it off. So you need to get the potatoes from the shredder to the oil quickly. If you don't do it quickly, they're gonna brown, and that just kind of looks ugly. It doesn't really affect the flavor, but it doesn't really look like a hash brown that way. My first mistake was a small one, but I used too small of a pan. Honestly, duck fat is so expensive that I wanted to maximize the fat to potato ratio without having to buy a lot of it. I didn't want to use like $40 worth of oil to make these hash browns. I had to switch pans to a larger one and added some grapeseed oil to be sure that the potatoes were submerged. Duck fat sounded like the really delicious kind of fancy thing to do. I've had duck fat fries before and I really like them. No shade against this brand or what, but the smell of this duck fat particularly was atrocious. It smelled like really stale, bad Thanksgiving, and it really made me not want to eat these hash browns. So if I were recommending you to do this, I would say use peanut oil. If you're really fancy, use olive oil. Just something that's affordable that you can confit a lot of potatoes in. Don't worry about getting duck fat. Temperature-wise, you're seeing barely any bubbling on the potatoes, but you do want to make sure it's warm enough that the potatoes are cooking. Once they're cooked, they can be drained, mixed with salt, thyme, and a little cornstarch. My goal with the cornstarch was to help kind of stick them into patties. I poured that whole thing onto a tray. Instead of hand shaping sort of like oblong style hash browns, I just made one big block that I was gonna cut into squares. Once they were cooled, I portioned them using a pizza cutter, and then I put them back in the fridge until I was ready to fry. The next bit of prep is the Longganisa, a Filipino sausage that's honestly not that dissimilar from chorizo, specifically Mexican chorizo. To a large bowl, I mixed together ground pork, annatto, which is gonna bring a lot of red coloring, and a little bit of like vinegary acid, tons and tons of garlic. This was a whole head of garlic for 1 pound of pork. Smoked paprika, a little cayenne for some heat, onion powder, garlic powder, dark soy, sugar, like a few tablespoons to, I see some recipes with like a full 1/4 cup of sugar, and then chicken powder. Last thing is a little bit of cornstarch for texture. Give that a really, really nice mix with your hands and let that sit in the fridge to sort of marinate with the hash browns for a few hours or a day. I did this the day before I was actually gonna make the sandwiches. One thing I love about this season in particular is we see a lot of the cast eating outside of their own restaurant, and they do something that I really love to do at restaurants, which is basically just take note of everything. Usually I do it on my phone. Sometimes I bring a journal around if I'm feeling really pretentious, but it's fun to take notes on the things that you like, the things you don't like. What are some interesting things that the restaurant is doing? It's one of like the most fun and life-giving things for me to do, and I think you would really enjoy it as well. Next time you go out to eat, take a little bit more time to think through what you're eating, what the flavors are, and I think it's gonna make your palate better trained the next time you're cooking. It's a good way to sort of get your mind out of the rut of cooking and eating the stuff that you always cook. A little bit of a cool thing they do on the show that I also really love to do. When it comes time to actually prep the sandwiches, you've got to make the eggs. In the case of the sandwich that Kasama serves and the sandwich we see, the eggs are custardy squares. America's Test Kitchen has a great recipe for these. You scramble 8 eggs and mix in salt and about 2/3 a cup of water, and then give that a really, really good mix. Add these to a metal baking dish and bake them in a water bath at 300 Fahrenheit for like 40 minutes. This was sort of early-ish for me, and I forgot how to read, and I didn't cover the eggs. That would help sort of trap everything and cook the tops as well. It basically meant the tops were not cooking, the bottom was overcooking, and so there was this like disparity between the actual cook on the eggs. Morning Cameron is sometimes not the sharpest tool in the shed, honestly. When the time was up, I tried to get them out of the pan by flipping it over and hitting the bottom, but that just wasn't happening. That's when I realized they weren't cooked enough. So I put them back in the oven to finish. So second time's the charm, right? Oh God, it got even worse. At this point, I had to salvage what I could, which meant basically one single perfect rectangle of egg came out of it, and the rest was just kind of unusable, which was really, really unfortunate, especially with the price of eggs right now. It was pretty heartbreaking, and I was already pretty defeated by the time I started cooking my hash brown and my longanisa. At least those were gonna go well though, right? Like nothing could go wrong from this point, right? So to cook the longanisa, I'll start there. Basically, I just took one of those balls and smashed it into the pan, so one side would get some really nice crusty color on it. You gotta be careful because these have a good amount of sugar in it, so if you cook this like a smash burger over high, it's gonna burn in like a second. So do this over like medium low. As I was doing that, I was frying my hash browns in the leftover fat from the confit potatoes. The oil caused a flame up as I flipped my longanisa, and it could have been really bad. Like if my pot of oil was hotter and closer to the actual flame that spit up, I could have totally started a grease fire. I was kind of rushing and my oil ended up not being hot enough. So the hash browns sort of fell apart before the browning could actually set in. I could see it happen, like I knew it was gonna happen. At this point, the hash brown was completely fallen apart, and this is why I keep frozen hash brown patties around. I just plopped it in the oil and cooked it until it was nice and crispy. I had been talking to my wife about these hash browns for like a full-on week. I was so excited to make and eat them. It was like one of the biggest letdowns I've had in a minute. It's been a wild ride. tried, but we made it. I think if you didn't know everything that had gone wrong, you would see this one sandwich and think like, wow, that looks perfect, and I bet it's really easy to make. Here are some tips and recommendations because as delicious as this looks and as delicious as it was, there are some things that I would do differently to make this work a little bit better in the home kitchen. First, the Longganisa is amazing. No notes, it was delicious. I actually saved a bunch of this and have just been cooking this for breakfast the whole week. The hash brown, as I mentioned, needs to be frozen and fried really, really hot and really fast. Yes, you could do the hash browns. You could also just buy some good quality frozen hash browns and brown those up as well. The eggs, man, those eggs. It looked so good, and I get why they work in a restaurant setting really well. The nice thing about this is you can cook a huge sheet tray of these eggs, portion them, and then make them each time a sandwich order comes in. The problem was I was trying to stick too closely to what you see at the restaurant, where in reality, I would have probably just made a fried egg and enjoyed that a little bit more. Maybe add a sauce to it too. I didn't see a sauce in the show, so I didn't add a sauce. You probably add a sauce. You probably add a little banana ketchup, a little sriracha, a little mayo, whatever you want. It would probably make it a little bit better. Okay, for the verdict. This was as good as it looks on screen, which is a really, really nice thing. You can probably tell it was a little bit harder to make than I had initially anticipated. These are just my thoughts. The better option would just be to go to the restaurant and actually get it there. I know why you're here. You know why you're here. You know, I know, you know why you're here. We're all here to see the most gorgeous French omelet filled with Boursin, topped with sour cream and onion potato chips. And you wanna know if it's worth making and if it's any good. A lot of people online talk about how hard it is to make French omelets, and the French are very strict about the way that they make food a lot of the times. These are way easier to make than they seem like they would be. Like, this took me 2 tries to get right, and I felt pretty confident about it. It may not have been perfect, but I don't think I would have been kicked out of a French restaurant for the way that I made these. You just witnessed how bad I can be with eggs, and if I was able to make it, I think you are as well. Ingredients-wise for this, it's really simple. It's eggs, it's Boursin cheese, which sounds really fancy, but you can find it at like every grocery store. It's kind of like French Velveeta. Like, it's really, really delicious, but it is sort of a cheese product. You've got chives and you've got sour cream and onion potato chips. 3 eggs is the perfect ratio for an 8-inch pan. So keep that in mind. The pan size dictates the egg amount. 8-inch pans are sort of the generic small size. So here's my hand, here's the pan. Your phone is about, this is like an iPhone 13 or something, I think. It's about the size of the pan on the inside. This size is a 3-egg size omelet pan. If you have too few eggs for your pan, you're gonna have a really, really hard time with it. The sieve trick we see is pretty neat to get a like perfectly smooth, homogeneous egg, but I found you can get the omelet right without it. The streaks of white can definitely cause the omelet to form weirdly, so if you're not using the sieve, just make sure it's really, really mixed. Even after the eggs have gone through the sieve, they still need to be mixed because some of the whites go through first, and you just wanna make sure that those are incorporated as well. You're gonna wanna also salt the eggs here. I know it's a big contentious thing. I know some people have said not to salt your eggs here because it makes them gray or watery. Look, if it's good enough for Jacques Pepin, it's good enough for me. Heat your pan over like medium low until it's hot enough to foam butter. This is your temperature gauge. You don't want it to brown, you want it to foam gently like you see here. Add in the eggs and you should immediately hear a sizzle, but again, you don't want this to brown right away. You're gonna begin immediately mixing with one hand on the pan. So one hand is shaking the pan sort of up and down, and the other hand using a spatula or a wooden spoon is mixing the eggs in a circle. So you're breaking up the curds as you go, and be sure to sort of scrape the edge of the pan so you don't get any dry, papery eggs. Don't use metal utensils on nonstick pans. They do sort of scratch it if you're not gentle with them. You know, it's not like the end of the world if you do it once or twice, but it just kind of opens you up to some of the chemicals that are in a nonstick pan that you don't want in your food and you shouldn't be consuming. You've got the freedom here to move the pan as you need it, to cover it as you need it, and to turn the heat off as you need it. Don't let the heat sort of get out of control and cook the eggs too fast on you. Once you start seeing small curds form in about half of the liquid or so, spread the eggs out to form a solid sheet on the bottom. But if you're also a little bit more squeamish about sort of wet, liquidy, custardy eggs, just cover it, take it off the heat, and let it cook a little bit longer. For me, I've got no problem with that. I like soft scrambled eggs to begin with, so I'm totally cool with just doing this all on and off the heat uncovered. I think like half of the point of a French omelet is that sort of custardy interior, so it is to be desired if you're going for the kind of technical right way of making this. I'm not judging you, so cook it how you want to cook it. I do think it's really, really funny. In the show, Sid makes this for a pregnant woman, And it's really not advised to be eating liquidy, runny eggs if you're pregnant. Like, you're not really supposed to have runny yolks. I don't know, it's probably not like the hugest deal in the world. It's probably not the same thing as like sushi or something. Just know there's a little bit more of a risk factor there. And I thought it was pretty funny that this was specifically made for a pregnant woman. Don't know if that's ironic or not, but yeah, just something I noticed, something I thought was funny. When it's right about here, you've got your curds form. It's set on the bottom, but not browned. Squeeze on a line of Boursin on the further edge. Lift the pan up with your non-dominant hand and use the edge of your spatula to sort of gently pull that back edge up. You're sort of just slowly nudging the eggs up over themselves. Add a little bit more butter if you need it. If you think that's gonna help lift the egg up and it's gonna make your job easier, totally go for it. Continue gently lifting the egg until it's over the halfway point, and then lift the pan in your hand and tap on your other hand repeatedly to shake the egg over the edge. You got your egg, you got your hand, you're holding it. You're basically just gonna tap this part of your hand with this part of your hand, and that shakes this edge of the egg out of the pan. So then you can use your spatula to fold that back on top of the Boursin line. That's how you get a sort of really nice, clean, 3-fold egg omelet. You can then grab your plate and flip the pan over to place the sealed side on top. You've got a really nice, clean, sort of milky yellow egg on the top. There should be no browning. It should be really, really buttery and really custardy on the inside. One thing we see Sid do that I think is super cool is you take a little bit of butter and just rub it on the top to give it a nice little shine. And then you can sort of use your hands, or classically you could use a clean towel to sort of clean up the egg, make sure it's in the right shape, make sure it's in the right place on the plate. I hit it with some flaky salt because I like that little bit of crunch. And then chives, really, really thinly sliced chives. And then you're gonna do the thing that broke the internet, which is crush on some sour cream and onion potato chips. There's a lot of great looking food in the show, but I think this one resonated with so many people because it's incredibly good technique paired with pretty non-pretentious ingredients. You know, eggs, chives, Boursin, sour cream and onion chips. It's a super cool cross-section of approachable ingredients and super, super solid technique. I expected this to be good, but not great. You know, I expected a moist omelet with chips. It is insanely good. Like, maybe it's the Boursin, maybe it's the custardy eggs, but this was so nutty good. I think the crunch of the chips helps a lot with what would normally be a pretty one-note texture. There's a reason why a lot of French omelets are served with salads, because you do need something crunchy to break up the just basically kind of soft custardy egg texture. Really genius, really delicious. Okay, verdict time. Is this as good as it looks on the show? You could probably guess by now, but yes, it is even better than it looks on the show. The culinary team really knocked it out of the park with this one. It's genius, it's easy to make, and it's delicious. I also think this is a little bit easier than it seems like it would be on the show. This seems like it would be such a hard thing to make, but in reality, it's pretty approachable, it's pretty straightforward, and I totally think you can do this. I will absolutely be making this one again, for sure. I think as a wrap up, if I'm totally honest with myself, the omelet is the only one I can recommend without any reservations. The lamb ragu I would totally recommend if you're cool with some gamey flavors. If you're not, I would make the adjustment to make it with beef. The sandwich is incredibly delicious, but it's easy to recommend with a couple adjustments. This was just the start of my deep dive into The Bear Season 2, so definitely subscribe if you're interested in seeing some specific recipes from the season. Be sure to drop a comment below letting me know what you think of this series and letting me know what you need to see from the show. I think I have 16 dishes in total from Season 2, maybe even more depending on how you look at it, but if there's anything you need to see, let me know and I'll try to make it. Massive, massive thank you to the amazing people supporting me directly on Patreon. They're the only reason I've been able to make this series happen, so consider checking it out and becoming a patron at patreon.com/CameronMarty. Thanks again for watching. Cheers.